as always. So good to be here tonight, and thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. We are, like I said earlier, on our 4th week of emotionally healthy spirituality. And I have to look at that every time, because every time I get the words in the wrong order and it comes out as all sorts of things. So you might notice that I will glance every now and then every time I mention it. We've also tried this microphone tonight, and it's been quite interesting as I'm walking around. Some people have said that it's a Beamer mic. Some people have said that it's a Britney mic, and some people have said it's a Kylie mic. And I think that's quite telling, depending on which one of those three things you said. But I'm not going to say any more about that. Yeah, we're just going to give it a go. And it just means that my hands are a bit freer. So we'll try that, see what happens. Week 1, we looked at, Vix took us through the problem of emotionally unhealthy spirituality, and we started looking at and asking the questions of what makes you angry, sad, anxious, and glad. So that was the first week. We started to talk about what it might look like to have those emotions. Week 2, but Vix did an amazing job. Week 1, very good. Thank you, Vix. So good. Yeah, give a round of applause. Yeah, come on. Yeah, it's all good. Week 2, Toby spoke to us about knowing yourself, that you may know God, with some helpful practices and applications. We looked at silence and solitude, which we also like to call and solitude. Trusted companions, getting uncomfortable, praying for courage. Week 3, Toby did a brilliant job as well. Thank you, Toby. Well done for that. Good. If I miss someone out, that's going to be horrible, isn't it? Week 3, last week was our 3rd week, and Sarah helped us to go back in order to go forwards, looking at our family life, growing up, and discussing the small question of what legacy would you like to leave behind? Let's jump straight into week 4, which is called Journey Through the Wall. Journey Through the Wall. And I can't emphasise more how important it is to have this discussion. And this isn't a new idea. This idea, and I'll explain a little bit more about what that means, but this isn't a new concept. This is something that's been spoken about for years and years and years. And the ancients used to refer to this as the dark night of the soul. So quite heavy stuff, quite full on things. Actually, the dark night of the soul sounds more like something that you hear around Halloween. But that's what we're going for tonight. This is something that I think is a really important subject to look at. And the reason for that is that we're quite good, I think, in church setting and talking about when things are all brilliant, when everything's going really well, when everything's brilliant, and we believe, and this is still 100% true, that Jesus brings life and freedom, and there is joy and peace and patience and love and everything that comes with knowing Jesus. So true, but there are also moments when we don't feel that, when we're not experiencing that, and actually there's some hard things that we have to face. We'll probably all go through one of these seasons, one of these dark nights of the soul. And it's normally longer than a night as well. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could even be years. And these aren't minor inconveniences. These aren't your sort of when you get a parking ticket, or when the milkshake machine at McDonald's isn't working, or when you wash the teaspoon in the sink and it decides to just make your whole kitchen into a swimming pool for some reason. I'm not talking about that, or like someone in the family leaves the toilet seat up. It's not like a minor inconvenience that you have to deal with every day. One of those things where you think, oh my goodness, like, I don't think I can take this one more time. Like, it's a teaspoon, why can't you just wash properly? This isn't what I'm talking about. These are life-halting, direction-changing, often painful lengths of time in our lives. And like I say, I think we're pretty good as a church and as the church in general talking about the good stuff. But if we fail to acknowledge that we are going through these times occasionally that don't make sense, that are confusing, that are hurtful, that are painful, that it makes us feel like God's not there sometimes. Like, we know that He is, we want to believe that He is, but actually sometimes we don't fully grasp what that would look like for God to be in there, because He might feel silent or He might feel aloof. But failure to acknowledge it can leave us in a place of long-term pain, ongoing immaturity, and confusion. But acknowledging it and discovering the God-given treasure that is found in it is life-changing. Because these moments of darkness, these moments where we hit the wall, as we're journeying through the wall, actually, those times can be full of new gold, new treasure we didn't know about who God is and about what's going on in ourselves. So, I thought, because I get bored quite quickly, so I always do visuals, so I thought I don't want to put you guys through me just talking for ages. And I've got two hands because this mic, hey, look at that, much more difficult. This is the wall, okay, tonight. And when I talk about like big things, I want to give a few examples of that, just to give you a nice idea. Let's start off with the light one, the death of a loved one. A life-changing diagnosis. This isn't an exhaustive list, by the way. There's shattered dreams. That might be, different for different people. It might be that actually it's something. It could be your football team losing. You think they're going to win. Some people might argue that that's not a big thing, but for some people it is. Breakdown in our relationship with God. Sometimes that can be an effect of the wall rather than cause of it. Inability to get pregnant. A disillusioning church experience. Obviously not here. Challenging family situations. Job loss. I was being quite PC on this challenging family situations. That could cover lots of things. Divorce. Betrayal. This is the list that it talks about in the book. So I've just picked these off. Betrayal felt like a bit of sounding more like pyro with that. But I think that's still relevant. A lot of people can experience betrayal. Or the breakdown in a relationship and not really in ways. So these are some of the things. These are the big things that we're discussing tonight. These are like the meaty things that we don't want. Like, that's the whole thing about the wall. Like, no one really will ever come to a place where they'll go, I really want to go through these things. It tends to come out of the blue. It's not a nice surprise. And then we're faced with it. So, in your groups, one of the things that I mentioned earlier was just about finding the value, like the gold, the treasure in these moments. And just to get us thinking about that, just for 5 minutes, what I'd love you to do is talk about what's the most valuable gift you've been given. And you can decide what that means. If you say Jesus and all of that, that's great, and that's true. But I'm thinking more about like birthday presents or a gift that somebody's given you. And why is that important to you? Why was that so valuable? So give me 5 minutes and then come back.
We've got the white light. What's great is I've never been behind in practice, it's a lot harder. I think it's harder both of us guys, but I never tell it I'm solo. I do that.
With the slides, shall I just say, is it helpful to say?
Oh wait, oh, you just want to sure.
We've got level 1 and 30. Not that one. Oh, what's that?
Black ones. That's the one hand. It's like the transition between well, I figured that 3 and 4 would be I like it. But yeah, it's so cool.
Cool. Great, thanks guys. If we just, don't worry if you didn't get around everyone, it's alright, it's not the end of the world. We can, as much as, you know, you can have an opportunity to talk about it later. If you've got something really burning, you just talk about it in the next one, that's the beauty of this. So yeah. The reason I wanted to focus on that is because hopefully the positive or the main focus of the wall, this idea of the things that we go through in life, is that however hard that situation is, actually it is about the treasure and the gold that God brings out of those situations. Often when we go through a wall, we are changed. No one wants to go through it, but there is invaluable gold to be found in it. And it may take, just like the old gold miners of the Wild West
and I'm sure they still do it today. I don't know why I had to specifically say Wild West. But with the panning, they had to pan through some of the mud, some of the rubble to be able to find the gold chunks. And sometimes it's like that. It might not be obvious straight away.
Because actually sometimes the gold isn't just always through the situations, but sometimes the gold's in us, sometimes the treasure's in us, and God is stripping away layers. I've just got written here, God isn't Fagin, and I forgot that I put that in the thing. And the reason I've put that, and I think this is quite important, is that I've got this really fond memory of watching Oliver Twist when I was younger. And there's a bit where Fagin panics, and all of the kids are like running away because of Bill Sikes. You might know the story. It's not in the Bible, but it's basically that Fagin runs away, and he goes into the wall where he keeps all his treasure, and he tries to pull the brick out, and he takes the gold, and he runs away with it. And that's not what I'm talking about, okay? Like, God isn't Fagin. God isn't like trying to hide this gold from us. It's the opposite. He's put the gold there for us to find, and actually he helps us discover more and more about who we are. So how does it change us? How does this wall change us? Well, we're going to look at 4 things. And the first thing is, it sounds originally not a very nice thing, but actually, when we dig in a little bit deeper, hopefully we discover that it is. It's a greater level of brokenness. If you have the first slide up, please. That's it, and then we've done these. Sorry, we did these ones earlier. Keep going through, and I'll say stop. That's the session we're on. Yay! A greater level of brokenness. What I mean by this is when we hit the wall, when we go through these situations in life that are that change us, that actually do something different, it gives us a greater understanding of what other people are going through. And that doesn't always make it better. It doesn't always make it feel like it's a good thing, but it increases our empathy. It increases our empathy for brokenness. And I'll give you an example of this, that a wall that I hit in my life. So my dad, about 15 years ago, had a really serious stroke, and it completely changed the dynamics of our family unit. He was a really independent guy. He was a painter and decorator, up and down ladders all day. He didn't drive, so he used to carry a ladder to different places. He even did a job in battle once, so he actually carried the ladders all the way over. I don't know why I just didn't ask someone to help him with a lift, really. But anyway, he was super independent. He was like the spiritual head of our family, in that he was an elder in the church. Mum was amazing as well, but Dad was always the one that would be driving forwards. He was always the person that would talk about faith. And then suddenly I came home from secondary school, and my mum came back from work, and we just found this note on the table saying, I've gone to the hospital. And we managed to ring the Conquest and say, we've just found this note. Have you got a Brian Malem in the building? And they're like, yeah, we have. We'd like you to come in. And it was an instant change. It was a wall that we hit. And totally out of the blue, there was nothing that was sort of suggesting that was going to happen. But what happened through that, I hit a new level of, looking at my dad in the bed. He was in hospital for a month. And just my first thing was to start praying. And I tried everything to pray for my dad. I wanted to see him completely healed. I believed that God could do it. I still believe that God can do it. And I fasted, and I put on all the worship songs that I knew that were the ones that would be really good to put on, and I'd sing them out in my room, and still nothing happened. I hit this deep confusion of, God, where are you? What are you doing? What's going on here? And I understood some of what it must feel like to actually see somebody that you really love changed forever. He still lives with the effects of that. And there are moments when I have to try and like work out what that looks like. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I reached a new level of confusion, sadness, and frustration. So number one, a greater level of brokenness. When we hit the wall, we actually have to come to terms with our humanity, our frailty. And actually, quite often, that will give us an understanding of what others may be going through at the same time. Number two, a greater appreciation for holy unknowing. A greater appreciation for holy unknowing, mystery in brackets. God isn't our secretary or our personal assistant. Most of the time, we have no idea what God is doing. And actually, the more we know about God, the more we realize we don't know. Take Moses, for instance, someone that we would probably say was pretty close to God. Moses, the first time he saw God was in a burning bush. God appeared in light. Then God led Moses into the desert where he revealed himself in a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. Finally, in Exodus 20:21, God led Moses into the thick darkness, it says in that verse, of Mount Sinai, where God spoke to him face to face. God appeared to Moses in three very different ways. Each one was totally mysterious. And to be honest, like we don't know what that would have exactly looked like, but I can imagine it would have been pretty awesome. God as a burning bush. God as a pillar of cloud by day, or fire by night. And then in the thick darkness, there's something amazing that, and this is what Gregory of Nyssa says, who was a bishop in 370 AD. Had to look that one up. And this is what he says, there's a quote, and it says, "It was in this pure darkness that the infinite light of God dwelled. And the more Moses grew to know God, the wilder, more dazzling and unknown this true and living God became to him." I'm going to read that again. "It was in the pure darkness that the infinite light of God dwelled. And the more Moses grew to know God, the wilder, more dazzling and unknown this true and living God became to him." There's a mystery about God. We can't grasp him. We can't fully understand. There's concepts and things that God reveals to us which are amazing and they keep us going. But ultimately, when we hit the wall, when we go through these times of confusion, it starts to show us that we haven't got it all together. We don't know it all. We love to try and put God into a box, to try and understand who he is. But actually, this just reminds us that maybe that's not possible. But there are promises, there are unchanging, unmoving truths about God, which are places of shelter in the storm of the wall. For my dad, when he had his stroke, this mystery continued. I remember one Sunday, he, as part of the effect, he couldn't lift his left arm, the arm that was affected. And he was just so fed up. He loved worshiping. He loved raising his hands in worship. That was like a big thing for him. So one Sunday, he was just like, "God, I just want to be healed enough so I can raise my hands to you in worship. I still want to worship you." And he raised his hand for the first time since the stroke. But God didn't fully heal him. The mystery of God in the wall is that sometimes things don't happen the way that we want them to. He then prayed for my brother who had a really bad back. My brother came out of the army with a really, really bad back. That's why he had to leave. And he's not a Christian himself, but my dad said, "Come on, let's pray for you. Let's pray for you." And my brother was instantly healed. Yet, my dad still lives with the effects of the stroke. He hasn't been healed of those things. It's bits and bobs, but actually the fullness of that we haven't seen. There's a mystery there. And like I said before, I remember crying out, fasting, worshiping, believing. But the important thing is that the wall quite often will lead us to a place where we have to trust in God, not the things that we want God to do for us. We have to trust in God, but not the things that we want God to do for us. This might mean that our opinion of God changes over time. And I think that's okay. That's part of what it is to be in relationship with God. It's to discover more things about who he is. He doesn't change, but our opinion might. So, we're going to have 15 minutes in our group, and I want you to think about this question. What is one of the ways your opinion of God has changed? And this could be in the last 5 minutes. It could be over the last year. It could be throughout your life at some point. Maybe that's a positive thing, or maybe you're sitting in a place of confusion because of something that's happened. Both of those are okay. God's big enough to be able to take that. But how has your opinion of God changed? We've got 15 minutes. Try and make sure everyone gets a chance to speak if they'd like to, but no pressure again. If you don't want to, you can just listen. Thanks. We'll be back in a bit. Time is up. Come on in. Come on in, Darren. Your time is up. It's like when you go on the go-karts, isn't it? You have to stop now. Or the swans. Has anyone been on the swan boats in Hastings? Yeah, back in the day. Come on in. Time is up, they used to say. Come on in, your little light would come on. That was the same as happened now for me. I hope that's been a helpful discussion, just to just sort of break up those 4 different things. So we've looked at the first 2. So the first one was, so we've looked at the greater level of brokenness. So when we come to the wall, we suddenly have to face our frailty, but also there's an increase in empathy. Greater appreciation for a holy unknowing, a mystery that we haven't got it all together. That actually it pushes us to trust God, not just the things that we want God to do for us. Number 3, we're going to jump straight into it, and it's a deeper ability to wait on God. So often we decide to do things in our own strength. I don't know if you do that, but I definitely do it. We do it in our way quite often instead of waiting on God for his way. Because quite often there's a patience that's needed there. It's about me not just running ahead and doing the thing that I think is the best, but actually stopping and asking God, what do you want me to do in this situation? You know, we're actually built for collaboration. Our whole point of our lives is relationship with God. And there's a push towards that. When we hit the wall, actually, sometimes it forces us to remember that we're not designed to do it on our own. I don't know if you've ever said to God, like, I can't do this on my own. And he's like, yeah, I know. You're not meant to. You're not meant to be doing it on your own. You're meant to be doing it with me. I love you. I want to do this with you. And quite often the wall will do that. And we see this again and again and again throughout the Bible. This isn't a new thing. So don't feel like if this is you experiencing it, that you're the first person ever to go through this. Abraham learned to wait at the wall. He was told that he'd be a father and had to wait 25 years until the fullness of that promise was received. There were some pretty major mistakes in the meantime as well. But the public and private humiliation transformed him into the father of faith for all history. Moses learned to wait at his wall. After murdering an Egyptian, he spent 40 years in the desert learning to wait on God. And God transformed him to what Numbers 12:3 says, to the meekest man. And the word meek can sometimes have a bit of a negative connotation, but it's about strength under control. Moses had immense strength that he was able to control. He was meek. And through this process of coming to the wall and waiting, he was able to find that. Hannah learned to wait at her wall. After years of mocking, heartbreaking infertility, unanswered prayers, her grief and humility transformed her into a fearless woman of God and an amazing mother to Saul, whose guidance would transform a nation. Jesus learned to wait at his wall. He learned to wait in obscurity and silence as a carpenter's son. And in the desert, he emerged, resisting temptation in the power of the Spirit. And we can also find this, that when we come to the wall, that there might be a moment where we have to wait. Just like these people in the Bible, just like Jesus, sometimes we have to wait. And the treasure is found in the waiting, the gold which is amongst the bricks. And again, we're not masochists. We're not sadomasochists. We don't want to ask for these things to happen. We'd never ask for it. But it's of infinite value when we find it. Number 4, a greater detachment from the world. Lovely. When we come to the wall, quite often we get faced with a very different question than the world asks us. The world often asks us this question: are you happy? Is what you're doing making you happy? That's like right at the center of marketing, of what people say to do. It's like, is this making you happy? Is this something that brings you happiness? A better question, and a question that I believe that God asks us, is, are you free? The world asks us, are you happy? God asks, are you free? Are you growing in freedom? Are you growing in the freedom that God gave you? Quite often when we find freedom, we'll also find joy. But not everything that we think will make us happy will actually do so. And we could end up completely bound by that stuff, which we think is like, well, if it feels all right, it's going to be okay. But God asked the question, are you free? Sometimes we don't know the answer to that. That could be quite a difficult question to answer. Sometimes we might know a little bit more. But Peter Scazzero, I think that's how you pronounce it. That's what we're going to go for. Who's the author of this book? He says this. He says, the wall, more than anything else, cuts off our attachments to who we think we ought to be or who else we falsely think we are. Layers of counterfeit self are shed. Something truer, that is Christ in and through us, slowly emerges. I'm going to read that again. The wall, more than anything else, cuts off our attachments to who we think we ought to be or who else we falsely think we are. Layers of counterfeit self are shed. Something truer, that is Christ in and through us, slowly emerges. We're a bit like lasagna. I think about this quite a lot. I really like lasagna. We're layers and layers and layers of stuff. Some of that stuff was there right at the beginning, your pasta. Some of it might have been added over time, your bolognese sauce. Is it bechamel sauce? Is that right? Or is it a white sauce? I never know. There's different opinions in the room. We're not going to go into that. That's not the question to ask. But if you take away all of that stuff, you're just left with the container. And we're called to be jars of clay. It talks about in the New Testament, the jars of clay, that we are called to hold the presence of God. That stuff, the layers of counterfeit self are shed away, and we're left with just who we are. It also says this: detachment is the great secret for interior peace. Detachment is the great secret for interior peace. Peace that is on the inside. Along the way in this journey of life with Christ, we get attached to behaviors, habits, things, people in an unhealthy way. It might be that a thought process has just absolutely taken over your mind and you can't get that out of you, and you might not even be aware that you're thinking in a certain way. But what happens is when you hit the wall, those attachments, those things that we've started to take our identity from, those things that we've started to create as part of our life, suddenly get challenged, and those things get stripped away layer after layer after layer until we're left with the raw identity of who we are. Now that is a really uncomfortable, painful process. Again, not something we ask for, but often something that is super powerful. I've shared in church before about some of my journey and how there was a point in my life where I just really felt like I had it all together. I was married, I had a really good job that I was quite up for telling other people about because it was like a fundraiser. Raising money for charity. I'm a good guy, And also, if I wanted to try and impress someone a little bit more, I'd chuck in manager as well, because that always feels like, as quite a young person, like I'm managing older people, I'm pretty good. That was always the thing that was sort of there. Like, I wouldn't want to say that, and I'd want to try and be really humble about it. But actually, that was part of the reason that I was actually telling people about that. And that was all taken away. That all went. My marriage broke down. I was made redundant at my job. and had to sell my house. That was the other thing. I had a house, and it was like, oh, great, with a drive. Oh, my goodness. Really used to go that I've got to drive, I've got to drive for the car. For the cars, no, it was only one. But it was always that thing, and those things got stripped away. I hit a wall. There was this wall of going through divorces actually up there. And I had to go through this, and it was like job loss as well. Look, these are all, I probably could tick most of these off actually, but I came to the wall, and it was like all of that stuff went. My attachment to the world and the identity that I thought that I needed to have, the thing that gave me my identity was taken away. I found it really hard to take my wedding ring off because I actually quite liked to have a wedding ring on. It showed that somebody liked me. And that might sound really stupid, but actually it was a sign that I was marriage material. Somebody said yes. And that was taken away. And I think it's really important to say that, and I've said this before, that my identity in Christ did not change. God didn't think any less of me, but I had to go through a process where those things were stripped away. So in your groups, looking at the things that we're just talking about, specifically, I want you to look at what behaviors, habits, things, or people have you been attached to in an unhealthy way? There's a big one, big question. What behaviors, habits, things, people, or I've put thought processes in here as well because that's been a big one, have you been attached to in an unhealthy way? I'm going to give you, again, 10, 12 minutes to have a think about this and share in your groups. Thank you. Okay, guys, if we just bring those conversations to an end. Some big stuff to talk about there. Like that's not sort of everyday necessarily conversations. Maybe it is. Maybe that's sort of something you do feel comfortable talking about every day. But for some of you, that might have felt a little bit uncomfortable listening to others, or maybe even for yourself, that might be the first time you've said something out loud in those areas. So thanks for being brave. Thank you for listening and caring for each other as well. If something's come up tonight and you want more prayer, because like we don't just want to open this stuff and then be like, great, like that's all done, lovely, you know, we're all sorted and we can carry on with life. We'd love to be able to carry on praying with you. And if you've got any questions as well, if anything's come up tonight and you're like, oh, I just want to find out a little bit more about this, or there's this one thing that was said and I'm not sure about it. We're not going to do a question and answer time now because I probably won't have the answers and we haven't got time. But I'd love for you to be able to email me. And that's, if it's a really difficult question, then that's Darren. So hope everyone got that. No, my email address is darren.malum@hthchurch.org. You can find it on our website as well, on our team. And also, if you want somebody to pray with you, then probably the best thing, I think we've got the slide from last week, so you could probably email Toby or Sarah, depending on if you're male or female, and you would like someone else to like take that forwards. And it might be that, if you're a guy, maybe me or Toby would get back, but it might be like Sarah or Vix or somebody that gets back from the team. But we'd love, don't like hold back on that. If you want someone to chat more about that or pray with you, we'd really love to do that. On the topic of prayer, in a minute we are going to spend some time just praying in our groups to finish. But I hope this has been helpful tonight. The wall, however painful it is, however bleak, hopefully it provides gold through a greater level of brokenness, gold through a greater appreciation for holy unknowing, a mystery and awe towards God. Gold through a deeper ability to wait on God, just like some of the great stories that we know from the Bible. It might be that you don't know those stories, and that's okay as well. I'd encourage you to go back and read those, even if you do know them, because there's so much gold and truth in that. People that are just like us, that went through some of these things in a very different time and era to us, but probably experienced a lot of the same emotions. And gold through a greater detachment from the world, from the expectations and the questions that the world is asking us, a detachment from that so we can be reattached to the stuff that God wants us to be asking and what God wants us to know about who we are. And there is hope. We're not going to go into that loads this week, but there is hope. It won't last forever. This wall will go. It'll be gone. Done. But the treasure and the gold that's come from that, the positive effects, will last for eternity. If you're thinking, I'd like to find out more about this, then there's two books. One is God on Mute. It might be a book that you've already read. It's by a guy called Pete Greig, and he talks a lot about his experience where he meets the wall, specifically around his wife, who has epilepsy, and he's a real man of prayer. Like, he started the 24/7 prayer movement, but still he wrestles with those things that are unknowns, mysteries, things that he can't grasp. So that's a really, really good book. And also the book that we're going from, which is this, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. So it was chapter 4. And if you'd like to get a copy of this, then you can pop over to the Hastings Bookshop. Don't go to the Hastings Box Shop, because you end up with chicken rather than a book. So Hastings Bookshop, which is just there, and Charlie's got some copies of this in there. So I'd encourage you to read through that, because there's loads more to unpack and think about as well. So we're going to finish with some time to pray. As you've been discussing tonight, there might be something that's actually just jumped out, and you're like, I'd really like prayer for this. We had a picture before we started tonight as we were praying as a team, and it was of a gold digger down in a mine, basically. Not a gold digger as in somebody that's after your money. That's a different thing. That's for another time. But somebody that is down in a mine, and in the darkness, chipping away at the hard rock, and then they find a piece of gold. And it might be that you feel like that. You're in a moment where you feel really helpless, where you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, but actually there is gold to be found. And there'll be a moment when you come out of that mine. That's not for you forever. The wall isn't forever. The wall's fallen down. The wall wasn't even a wall. It was a trestle table with some pieces of paper stuck on it. There will be a time when that goes, and it'll be behind you, and it might seem a lot smaller than you first thought it was. But like I say, it's something that hopefully will bring gold and treasure and value that will last forever. So we're going to pray, and feel free to head off when you need to. It's 9:10 now. We'll definitely finish at 9:30. But if you need to go before then please do feel you can do that. But if we spend like 15 minutes just spending some time just praying together. And just the last thing that I'm going to say is that next week is a week off. So we've got a little break. It's nice that no one cheered then. That was good. That's positive. And we'll be back with session 5 on the 2nd of November, which is Enlarge Your Soul Through Grief and Loss. So it's another one to think about, but actually, again, a really important conversation. They're not all going to be like that as well, but these are important things to talk about. These are important places to go. So let's spend some time praying in our groups now, and break next week, and then we'll be back on the 2nd of November for session 5. Thanks a lot, guys, and see you soon.